discussed about that in quite elaborately, how the whole process of the self-realization ultimately culminates in devotional service to the Lord. So Krishna concludes the chapter explaining that Madgater Antaratmana. So Madgater Antaratmana, so within the heart, core of the heart, the devotee sees the form of the Lord. He just remembers the Lord, and that is considered to be the topmost worship. Yoginam api sarvesham Madgater Antaratmana Shraddhavan Bhajate Yoma. So with great faith and devotion, he worships the Supreme Lord. Now, the Lord further explains, so how to worship Him. So what kind of a personality He is. So what are His glories? What is His greatness? What is His unique position? So that is required to be known so that a devotee can absorb in the worship of the Lord with great faith, with love and affection. He can engage in the service of the Lord. So that is required. So that is the link for this chapter. We can see here. So yogi most united with Him, think of Him. So that means what? So like, as in the last verse it says, that he is the topmost yogi who is always absorbed in Krishna. So how to be absorbed in Krishna, how to get that faith, how to develop affection to Krishna, Krishna is going to elaborate now. How one can become such Krishna conscious person is explained in this verse. Srila Prabhupada explains here in the purports. And also Srila Sridhara Swami in his commentary, he makes a point of what nature are you to whom worship is made. So this is also an interesting point, because as having said that you have to worship the Supreme Lord, so obviously one will be more curious to know how to worship Him. What is His nature? What are His qualities? Is He a person? Is He impersonal? All those details Krishna is going to elaborate. So the chapter unfolds like this. So in the first 3 verses, Krishna gives the importance of hearing from Him. Tat Shrunu is very significantly discussed by Srila Prabhupada also and all the previous acharyas. So knowing Krishna in full by hearing from Him. These are the first 3 verses which is dealing with it. So the knowledge about Krishna and how that knowledge in itself is complete, Krishna is going to discuss in the first 3 verses. And then how Krishna is the cause of all the causes, the phenomenal world, the nominal world, everything, how Krishna is the cause behind everything, how Krishna is the essence of everything, that will also be discussed, and how He is the actual sustenance. He is the one who is holding in the entire universe. Everything is existing because of Him. Krishna Himself is going to elaborate that. And then after having explained about the glories of the Lord, or given a start about the Lord's glories, there is an obvious question that is being raised. So why not then many are not surrendering to the Supreme Lord? So then Krishna discusses, yes, there are 4 kinds of devotees who surrender to me, and 4 kinds of people do not surrender to me. So Krishna further discusses that 4 impious who do not surrender, and 4 pious persons who surrender to the Supreme Lord. Then also Krishna discusses about, well, there are some people who never surrender to anyone who is they are not into theism at all. That is one category. And another category, within the theism, there are various gods. This is the understanding of quite some people. So, if they are not surrendering to Krishna, then to whom else they are surrendering to? So, they are surrendering to the demigods. So, Krishna is discussing about demigod worshippers in verses from 20 to 24. In quite detail, he elaborates in this chapter what is the problem with the demigod worship, and why we should not engage in demigod worship, and what is the position of the demigods, and what is the result of worshipping the demigods. All these things Krishna is discussing. And also there are other category of worshippers who are the word impersonalists, who worship the impersonal form of the Lord. So Krishna also gives clearly what is his position, what is his stand on worship of impersonal form of the Lord. So what is his view on it? Krishna very clearly elaborates that. And then Krishna, with the concluding verses, he very much discusses about how the living entities are bewildered. On the first hand, how the living entities came to this material world. What is the cause of having, what is the reason for the jiva to wander in this material world, life after life. And he gives a clear indication what is the problem. And further Krishna gives a solution also, that one has to take shelter of him. Okay, now let's go to the first verse of this chapter. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Maya Saktamanah Partha Yogam Yunjan Madashrayah Asanshayam Samagrang Mam Yatagnyasya Tachrunu. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Now hear, O son of Pritha, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt." But this is a very important verse. The 108 verses, or in whatever important verse, is the most important verse, because Krishna is now very clearly, is the first verse in this series of Bhagavad Gita chapters. Krishna very clearly is explaining about the perfection of life is to develop attachment to Krishna. Always be in full consciousness thinking of the Supreme Lord. And all those things happen by Krishna is giving the secret formula, or open formula is giving here, that touch Shrunu, you have to hear from me. So this is the secret of making progress in devotional service, is to hear from Krishna. So Krishna himself is pointing out that one has to hear from the Supreme Lord. So Srila Prabhupada in the purport, he is again in the beginning of the purport, he is just summarizing what is there in the 7th chapter, that Krishna is discussing about his opulences and how there are people who are fortunate, 4 kinds of fortunate people who are attached to the Supreme Lord, and 4 kinds of unfortunate people, they do not surrender to the Supreme Lord. So these are the major discussions of this chapter. And as discussed in the previous chapter, we can see that here it is explained that one has to concentrate his mind on the Supreme Lord. So that is what is the conclusion of the previous chapter as well. Madgater antaratmana, with his body, mind and heart fully absorbed in the Lord. So Srila Prabhupada is pointing out, by concentrating one's mind upon Krishna, one is able to know the absolute truth completely, but not otherwise. Impersonal Brahmajyoti or localized Paramatma realization is not perfect knowledge of the absolute truth, because it is partial. Full and scientific knowledge is Krishna, and everything is revealed to the person in Krishna consciousness. In complete Krishna consciousness, one knows that Krishna is the ultimate knowledge beyond any doubts. Now this is the conclusion of the previous chapter as well, that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the perfection of spiritual realization. And all other yoga systems are meant to come to that understanding. Gradually, you may be in different situations. So we discussed about the yoga ladder. So there are steps in the yoga ladder. Ultimately, one has to reach the destination. So there are different steps. Ultimately, it culminates in devotional service. So Srila Prabhupada, he makes a point here. You can see different types of yoga are only stepping stones on the path of Krishna consciousness. So that has to be ultimately understood. So all kinds of practice you engage in, and ultimately if you do not realize Krishna's supremacy and if you do not engage in his service, then it's Shama Eva Hi Kevalam. So that is what it is all about. So Srila Prabhupada is summarizing that, and further Prabhupada is pointing out, by practice of Krishna consciousness, yoga, one can know everything in full, namely the absolute truth, the living entities, the material nature and their manifestations with paraphernalia. So when we say absolute truth, it includes all these things. It includes the living entities, the material nature and their manifestations with paraphernalia. So when we say by knowing Krishna, we know everything. So that means that because Krishna is the essence of everything. So by knowing Krishna, we get to know everything. Now, this is the whole point here to be understood in this verse. That so how to know about Krishna, how to know about his position, how to know about his glories, how to develop the attachment to him. Now, it all begins with hearing about the Supreme Lord. So that's why in this verse, this touch Shrunu, Krishna himself is saying, you hear from me. Krishna is pointing out this. So this is an important point to be very much understood. If we can understand this point, that we have to hear from Krishna, and if this one point clicks to our head, then our whole life changes. There is a complete change in the worldview of everything that we see, that we smell, that we hear, that we touch. There is a complete change in our consciousness. So it's so important to hear from the Supreme Lord. The Lord's transcendental message is eternally available. He has already spoken the Bhagavad Gita, and it is coming in parampara, and all that the jiva needs to do is to give oral reception to this transcendental message. So Srila Prabhupada is pointing out, concentration of the mind upon Krishna, the Supreme, is made possible by prescribed devotional service in 9 different forms, of which Shravanam is the first and most important. So let's try to understand why Srila Prabhupada is stressing here that Shravanam is most important. In fact, if you can see the entire creation itself, the sound vibration, the sound is from sound everything comes out. So if we see, the discussions are there in the Bhagavatam as well, that the Lord, the Supreme Lord, as Mahavishnu, he lies down, he in fact creates the space for the creation to happen. So there is Akash, and Akash means there is always a vibration, there is always a sound, and from that sound, in fact, all the senses are also manifested. The sense of hearing, the ears are manifested because of the sound, and then from the sound there is air, and then from air there is fire, and then there is water, and then there is earth, and then simultaneously you can see also the senses, sense of touch, then the form, then the taste, the smell, everything gets manifested. So everything, the root cause is the sound. Ultimately, Lord is the cause of everything, but from sound we can see everything emanating. So, so the importance of hearing is being stressed here, and we can see the Lord is also seated in everyone's heart as Paramatma. And where are we? If you see, where are we sitting? We are also in the heart. Now we need to understand that we have to hear from the Supreme Lord. So the sound vibrations are, what are the Vedas? Vedas are the sound vibrations of the Lord. So they are eternally, the sound is eternally there. And the problem with the conditioned souls like us is that we don't hear that sound. We hear some other sound. This is the problem, and then we get caught up in Maya. We just totally controlled by those sound which is not going to help us to make progress in our life. So here we can see Krishna says, Krishna is giving a science of how this Krishna consciousness is a science, he is explaining. So by giving oral reception, touch-shrunu, by hearing, what happens to us? Maya sakta manaha. So by hearing about Krishna, our asakta, we become attached, our mind becomes attached to Krishna. And when we become attached to Krishna, then naturally we become steady in the process of yoga. So remember, we heard the verse in the 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, wherein Krishna says that we have to, with our body, mind, words, we have to engage in yoga for the purpose of pleasing the Lord, satisfying the Lord, for the purpose of purity, being pure. Yogina karma kurvanti, sangam tyaktvatma shuddhaye, Krishna says this. So this is what happens by developing attachment to the Supreme Lord. Then what happens is that gradually we become fixed. Initially there is some kind of faith, but that faith becomes strong by giving proper oral reception. So that's one point to be understood. Then what happens? We become the beginning of devotional service is hearing. By hearing from day one, we are engaged in the process of surrender. So then mad ashraya. Then what happens? So yogam yunjan, we engage in the process of yoga, and then we take hold of Krishna's lotus feet. Mad ashraya, taking complete shelter of the Lord. So that point is also discussed in the 6 angas of surrender. So taking complete shelter of Krishna. So one's faith becomes strong, and then his dependence on Krishna increases. He is fully confident that Krishna will protect him. He is his real guardian. So mad ashrayaha. then what is the final result of it? Then there is no more doubts. Asamshayam samagrahumam. There is no more sanshaya. He is cleared of all doubts and he is completely fixed in the absolute truth, which is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Now, if you carefully look at the purport, Srila Prabhupada, having given an introduction about the process of hearing, Tatshrunu, Krishna, Srila Prabhupada goes on to speak about how Krishna is the greatest authority and we have to hear from him. No one can be a greater authority than Krishna, and therefore by hearing from him, one receives the greatest opportunity to become a perfectly Krishna conscious person. One has therefore to learn from Krishna directly or from a pure devotee of Krishna and not from a non-devotee upstart puffed up with academic education. So this is again an important point. It's being, we see right from the beginning of the first chapter, from the preface, from the introduction, Srila Prabhupada is stressing on this point, from whom we should hear. There are so many subject matters to hear and there are so many people from whom we can hear. Srila Shukadeva Goswami also is touching on this theme in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Shrotavyadini Rajendra Nrinam Santi Sahasrashaha Apashyatam Atmatattvam Griheshu Grihamedinam. So there are so many subject matters to discuss, Shukadeva Goswami is saying, but all those things are useless subject matter because Apashyatam Atma Tattvam. You don't understand about the Atma Tattva. So Atma Tattva means to know what is the position of the Supreme Lord and how we are related to him, who we are, what is our constitutional position with respect to the Supreme Lord, and how we have to be engaged in this service. This whole process can be summed up as self-realization. Self-realization doesn't stop with knowing that we are not this body, we are spirit, soul. That is one level. But proper understanding is that what is our relationship with the Supreme Lord and how do we engage in his service. So this has to be understood. Now, here, so Shukadeva Goswami is explaining that so there are thousands and thousands of topics to be discussed, but all those topics are useless because which will not invoke our rati, our attraction to the Supreme Lord. Those topics are just hard labor. So Srimad Bhagavatam is again and again repeating the same point. Same thing Srila Prabhupada is pointing out here, that this conviction that we have to hear from Krishna, we have to follow the instructions of Krishna, we have to engage in his service, and that is the real benefit for us. And on top of it, actually the most important point, that by this process we will be able to please Krishna, and by pleasing Krishna we become attached to Krishna. So this has to be understood, and this point we can get only by hearing from a bona fide devotee of the Lord. We get that message from Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, and then we get that message from his bona fide devotee. So this has to be understood very clearly. We can see there are in the modern days there are so many people, they are reading so many books in the name of philosophy, in the name of spiritualism. So many different kinds of books they read. But many of, if you just ask them, have you ever read Bhagavad Gita? Have you seen? Many of them, they have never gone through, they have never touched Bhagavad Gita at all. They do not know what is the message that is there in the Bhagavad Gita. And it's an unfortunate situation. So it's so much important, and it is required that we need to preach this message widely. At least let them give one-time oral reception from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This pure message which is coming in Parampara. Tatshrunu. So if they give oral reception, then the Lord, who is seated in the heart as Paramatma, one will get to know about him. When they get to know about the Lord, then that is enlightenment. That is actually education. Education means bringing someone to light from darkness. So that is required. So that's Srila Prabhupada is pointing out that the puffed up academic personalities, they cannot impart this knowledge because for them everything is just a theory. So Srila Prabhupada, in the conclusion of this purport, he's again pointing out the signs of hearing, how everything begins from hearing, and how from that hearing, this little bit of faith that is there in the jiva is invoked, and then from that faith it takes you on to the level of love of God, prema, shraddha to prema. This is what happens by hearing. So all begins with hearing. Okay, so these 4 verses that is mentioned here, these are very important verses in the Bhagavatam. It's very good to know these verses, not only to know the shlokas, to know the meaning of it, And Srila Prabhupada just summarizes these 4 verses to conclude this purport. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, this process of understanding Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth, is described in the 2nd chapter of the 1st canto as follows. Shrinvatam swakata Krishna punya shravana kirtanaha hridyantasto hi abhadrani vidunoti suhritsatam nashtaprayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavatyuttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki tadarajas bhava kamalobhadayaschaye cheta etair anavidham stitam sattve prasidati evam prasanna manaso bhagavat bhakti yogatah Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam Mukta Sangasya Jayate Vidyate Hridaya Grantish Chidhyante Sarva Sangshayaha Shriyante Chasya Karmani Drishta Evat Manishware. So now let's try to understand how everything begins with hearing. Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada in the translation he points out that one has to hear from Krishna or from, one may say Arjuna directly heard from Krishna, but the Vedic literatures are there which is non-different from Krishna. Bhagavad Gita is non-different from Krishna. So we hear this transcendental message from either from Krishna directly or from the scriptures or from the Vedas or from the Bhagavad Gita or from the Bhagavatam, which is non-different from Krishna. So one should have a firm conviction about this, that whenever we come in touch with the transcendental book Bhagavata, though that is directly Krishna himself. And what is the result of hearing from Krishna? Hridayantasto hi abhadrani vidinoti suhritsatam. So the Lord who is seated in the heart, what he does, he cleanses all the misgivings, all the anarthas, all the wrong ideas, all the attachments that we have in this material world. The Lord, he just clears that. So that is the whole point, that like by hearing from the Supreme Lord and his bona fide representative, our attachment, we have different kinds of attachment before coming to Krishna consciousness. We are reading the newspapers, we are always into the internet news, we just read all kinds of useless things. Now with the modern technology we have this WhatsApp and all these things, so many things we are just constantly, continuously hearing. So we are always hearing, you see. All the time we are hearing something or other we are hearing. So but then we have to just change the propensity of hearing from anything other than Krishna conscious topics. So we can see Srila Rupa Goswami also is very much stressing the importance of hearing Krishna Katha. So that is being stressed here. So hear about Krishna. So now then the Lord who is seated inside the heart will purify our heart from all the misgivings. So we can see here the Lord purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him. So that is, see, our whole program itself, if you see, it's molded like that. We wake up in the morning, we have Mangalarati, then we chant our japa. So that is one kind of hearing. And then we come and then offer our obeisances to the Lord, we greet the deities, and then we have a morning Bhagavatam class. And then we have a whole day we are packed with service. And then again we spend some time in reading Srila Prabhupada's books, which is which are the Vedas for us. Srila Prabhupada's books, specifically Gita, Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita and other books. And then again we meet in the evening, we discuss from the Bhagavad Gita. So our whole program is packed with hearing. And when we are regularly hearing, our consciousness is enlivened. We are constantly reminded that we are eternal servants of Krishna. Unfortunately, because of the influence of Maya, we forget that we are Krishna's eternal servant. That is why Srila Prabhupada also is pointing out here that either we have to hear from Krishna or from his bona fide representative. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is a verse which very nicely points out that it is sometimes difficult for us the Lord is seated inside the heart as Paramatma, but we are not able to see him, we are not able to hear from him. So it says, Jiva Sakshat Nahi Chaitya Rupe, Guru Chaitya Rupa. So Guru, externally he is appearing, who is internally seated inside as Paramatma. The Lord has appeared as a spiritual master. Sakshat Guru Mahanta Hoy, Krishna Mahanta Swarupa. So he is Krishna himself who has appeared externally and he is instructing us here, wake up in the morning, chant, read, engage in service, serve the devotees. In this way, you will always be attentive. You will always be able to be absorbed in the Lord's name, form, and ityadi, and other things. So that's the whole point. So we are trying to see God in the heart. That is at this condition stage is difficult for us. But if we hear from the Lord's representative, from spiritual master, bona fide spiritual master, then we will be able to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead within the heart. So that is the whole key that we discussed in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna himself has set up this system of hearing from the bona fide spiritual master. So now this is what is being discussed here. So further, what happens by that hearing? Then all the influence of the three modes, tada rajas tamo bhava, kama lobhada is changed. So we become purified of the influence of the three modes of nature by engagement in devotional service. Then all of our lower tendencies are reduced, diminished, of lust, anger, greed that is diminished. Then what happens? When these impurities are wiped away, the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness. Sthitam sattve prasidati. So one becomes fixed in sattva guna, and then he transcends that also. Then further, by engagement in devotional service, one knows the signs of God properly. Bhagavat tattva vijnanam. Evam prasanna manaso bhagavat bhakti yogataha bhagavat tattva vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate. So by further hearing from Krishna, engaging in devotional service, he is purified, and then he becomes fixed in devotional service. And when he becomes fixed in devotional service, what happens? By further purification, all the misgivings, all the reactions of that we have accumulated for millions and millions of lives, they all become shattered by the power of pure devotional service. Vidyate hridaya granthis. So all the hridaya granthis means all the knots in the heart are severed by the sword of knowledge of pure devotional service. Then one comes to know, one is completely fixed in his constitutional position as eternal servant of the Lord, and he knows his swarupa, and he is blissfully engaged in the Lord's service. So then Srila Prabhupada concludes, enables one to come at once to the stage of asamshayam samagram. So that's what Krishna says here, asamshayam samagram mam, understanding of the Supreme Absolute Personality of Godhead. So this is the whole science, that just by hearing, by submitting ourselves, then one gradually comes to the level of pure love of God. So this is what happens. So Prabhupada concludes the purport. Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness, one can understand the signs of Krishna. So this is being repeated. So we need to understand that from whom we should hear, how the hearing process perfectly works. So Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur in his commentary also, he points out the 7th chapter describes the powers of Krishna, the powers of the Lord who is most worthy of worship, and the 4 types of persons who worship and do not worship Krishna are also described. And another significant point is also mentioned in the commentaries, which will be discussed in the further chapters also. The accomplishment of liberation through jnana and ashtanga yoga is brought about only through the influence of bhakti, which is a subordinate element within those practices. It is stated in many places in the scriptures that without bhakti, these 2 processes are insignificant. Now, as we discussed, this chapter speaks about the significance of devotion. So, in all the other processes, we also discussed before that ultimately all the other processes culminates in devotional service. So now all the other processes are actually, there is a tinge of devotion that is involved there. That is what is making one to make progress. So that is what is being pointed out by the acharyas as well. Okay. Now, further, Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur in his commentary also says, in your statement at the end of the last chapter, Yoginam api sarvesham, I understood that you have indicated the unique quality of your own devotee who absorbs his mind in you, madgatena antaratmana, and has faith in you. But what type of devotee is he? One would expect that he is qualified with knowledge and realization. Now, Krishna is, in this chapter, if you see, he is going to speak about the nominal world, phenomenal world, means material world, spiritual world, the Lord's qualities. Why he is speaking about all these things? Because the devotee hears about all these great attributes of the Lord, and he is further inspired to surrender and take complete shelter of the Lord. So we can see, we will be seeing in the upcoming verses that Krishna will be discussing about the knowledge and the realized knowledge. All those things Krishna will be discussing about. Okay, now there are quite some, actually just to mention one point, this chapter, if you have seen Srila Prabhupada's lectures, I forgot to take a count before coming for the class, I am sure there are more than 30 lectures Srila Prabhupada has given, 32 lectures if I am not wrong, maybe if someone can check it later, just on this first verse, touch Srila Prabhupada is just banging so much on this point. You have to, even this entire month, 1 month, you just, every day one lecture you hear, you can hear about this in so many amazing ways. Srila Prabhupada is pointing out the importance of hearing. He is just with such conviction and with great earnestness, with great urge that come on, Krishna is speaking, take shelter, surrender to him, hear from him, hear the transcendental message of Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada, you can see the urge when Srila Prabhupada is speaking on these verses. Of course, any lecture Srila Prabhupada gives, speaks with full conviction, but you can see Srila Prabhupada is stressing how important it is for us to hear from Supreme Personality of Godhead. So I've just extracted few quotes here, just for us to get some inspiration. Here is one. So the Krishna consciousness is also yoga, the perfect yoga, the highest of all yogic systems. Anyone may come and we can challenge and we can say that this is the A1 yoga system. This is A1 and it is very simple at the same time. You haven't got to exercise your body. Suppose if you are weak or you feel some tiredness, but in Krishna consciousness you won't feel. All our students, they are simply anxious to be overloaded with work. Krishna consciousness. Swamiji, what shall I do? What can I do? They are actually doing nicely, very nice. They don't feel tired. That is Krishna consciousness. In the material world, if you work for some time, then you will feel tired. You will require rest. Of course, I am not, I mean to say, exaggerating myself. I am an old man of 72 years. Oh, I was ill. I went back to India. I have come again. I want to work. I want to work. Naturally, I would have retired from all these activities, but I don't feel. So far I can do, I want work. I want to, day and night. At night I work with dictaphone. So I am sorry. I become sorry if I cannot work. This is Krishna consciousness. One must be very much anxious to work. It is not that it is an idle society. No, we have got sufficient engagement. They are editing papers, they are selling papers. Just simply find out how Krishna consciousness can be spread. These boys, this is practical. So I am sure all of us sitting here, we all can imagine when we regularly read, when we hear, we are so inspired to do something for pleasing Guru, Srila Prabhupada and Krishna. Is it not? It's a fact. Nobody can deny that. And when we don't hear, when we don't hear properly, we don't chant properly, we are so dull. For anything looks like some Herculean task. Moving a small, say this from this, what is this? This cover lid from here to here. Oh, I have to move it from here to here. Oh, it becomes. You look at it like something impossible. But when we are when we just regularly hear from Krishna about his glories, about the power of devotional service, how devotees' lives are transformed, how the pure devotion is the perfection of life, then we become surcharged. Even if apparently we are sick also, we want to come and do something for Krishna. So this is the glory of devotional service. So this is what Srila Prabhupada is pointing out. So from being in the conditioned state, we will become very active and then become surcharged to do something for Krishna. So this is what is required. In fact, the Lord spoke the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. Arjuna was in Maya. He was thinking himself that all my relatives, how can I fight with him? So Krishna spoke the transcendental message and he woke him up, he shook him, and then he said that come on, you fight now. So that's what is going to happen to us in our life also. We are in Maya completely, we are covered by Maya and we are stuck in this material world, birth after birth. But if we give oral reception to Krishna through his bona fide representative, we will be surcharged. All the anarthas in our heart will be cleared off. Okay, Srila Prabhupada goes on to, there is another conversation. Swamiji, I think she means that do you have to do any kind of breathing exercise besides chanting? Prabhupada, no. There is no breathing exercise or gymnastic. No, nothing. The breathing exercise is there. When you chant Hare Krishna, there is breathing. There is nice breathing. Yes. Within this room, there is sky, but we cannot understand the sky. But if we try to understand this table, we can at once understand, because in the table, if I touch, I feel the hardness. The perception is there. My knowledge can receive that this is a hard table. But if I speak about sky, I cannot get any direct perception. Therefore, simply understanding of greatness of God is not all. That is the beginning of attachment. God is great, but you have to develop your attachment to the fullest extent, and that is love of God. So there is one level is knowing the greatness of God, but then further going above that, one has to develop attachment properly, because Maya Sakta Manaf Partha, that is being discussed in this verse. You cannot love sky, that is not possible. If I say you love sky, you will say how to love sky. I want a tangible thing. I want a boy, I want a girl, then I can love. How can I love sky? So simply understanding of greatness is not all. Then from the development of from the idea of sky, there is next development is air. In the air you can perceive something. When the air is blowing, you can at least have some touch sensation. So as in the material world, from the sky develops the air, from air develops the fire, electricity, and from electricity or fire develops the water, and from water develops this land. When it comes to the land, you can understand something very tangible. Similarly, greatness of God has to be developed. How? From greatness of God, the idea of greatness, the sense of service must develop. God is so great, so I must render some service to God. This sense of service is further development. Just like from the sky, the air develops. Similarly, from the idea of greatness of God, the sense of service develops. So this is the whole key point, no? No, just to know about the greatness of God is not sufficient. So what are you doing for the Supreme Lord? Just to say that it's all because of the Lord's mercy, just to say that that's not sufficient, then how are you acting on it? How are you doing something for the Lord? So that is required. So Srila Prabhupada is pushing that. Do something for Krishna in your life. Then you make progress. So that happens by Tatshrunu. Gargamuni. Yes, but we are in Krishna consciousness. We are not interested in that Paramatma. Are we? No. We have no interest because we are directly meditating on Krishna. Paramatma is partial manifestation, Krishna. But Krishna is the Supreme. Therefore, we concentrate our mind on Krishna. That means Paramatma is already served. If you have got $1 million, then $10 service is already done. Paramatma is partial representation of Krishna. So if you concentrate your attention, whole attention to Krishna, that is far, far better than, and that is, I mean to say, accepted in the Bhagavad Gita. Yoginam api sarvesham. Anyone who is concentrating his mind upon me, he is the topmost yogi. He is the topmost yogi, and that is very easy. If you simply see the picture of Krishna, the statue of Krishna, worship Krishna, chant his name Krishna, eat Krishna's prasadam, talk Krishna, read Krishna's book, then you are always in samadhi. This is perfect samadhi. So Krishna consciousness is not an ordinary thing, it is the highest, topmost yoga system. Is that clear? Gargamuni, yes. So these are from the lecture Srila Prabhupada gave on March 17, 1968, San Francisco. All the quotes, whatever that I read so far. Here is another one. We are chanting, we are hearing, we are dancing, we are enjoying. Why? Just to detach our life from all nonsense things and to attach to Krishna. This is the process. This is Krishna consciousness. You have to make your mind attached to something. But if you make your mind attached to something nonsense, then the same thing, Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi, birth, death, old age and disease. Tamal Krishna. If Maya takes a hold on one, what is the quickest way to go back to Krishna? Oh, that Krishna. Simply whenever there is Maya's attraction, just pray to Krishna. Please save me, please save me. This is the only way and he will save you. We are in the Maya's kingdom. So Maya is strong very here. But if we catch Krishna very strongly, Maya cannot do anything. Yes, that we should be fixed up in catching Krishna very tightly. Then there is no fall down. Okay, here is. You offer Krishna nice food stuff, you will eat it. So just like if I decorate my face, I cannot see how it is beautiful. But if I bring one mirror before me, the reflection of my face is beautiful. Similarly, you are reflection of Krishna. Man is made after God. So if you make happy Krishna, then you will see that your reflection, you are happy. It's a beautiful point. So Shri Prahlad Maharaj also speaks this in the Bhagavatam. Krishna does not require your service to become happy. He is complete in himself. But if you try to supply, make happy Krishna, then you will be happy. This is the Krishna consciousness movement. So try to decorate nicely Krishna. Try to give all footsteps to Krishna. Try to keep Krishna in all comfortable position. In this way, you will reciprocate all the things that you offer to him. This is Krishna consciousness. Okay, here is another quote. Prabhupada, hey, that is if one simply hears, simply by hearing sincerely, seriously, he becomes perfect. It is so nice. If simply people come here and simply hear Bhagavad Gita and try to understand it, he becomes perfect. But they will not come. As soon as they will hear, oh, Swamiji is preaching that I am not God. God is different. Oh, don't come here. Finish. I have to flatter him that you are God. Then he will come. His hearing is disturbed because there is no flattering words. But if he sticks to hearing only, it becomes perfect. But Maya will not allow him to hear. Oh, please get out, don't come here. Even our students, they remain here for some time, then go away. Maya dictates. Oh, why you are spoiling your time? But the process is very simple, hearing. But Maya will not allow him to accept this simple process. But so one has to become very strong. Mam eve prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. One who determines, yes, I will hear of Krishna, nothing, then Maya cannot do anything. Maya was defeated. If simply one decides that I am simply of hearing, simply I hear of Krishna and nothing more, then he defeats the Maya, simply by determination, that's all. So this is the key point, that many times we hear, this point, Shravanam is the heart of Kirtan, isn't it? So Srila Prabhupada is so much stressing that by giving oral reception, by hearing, so one way, that's why we don't even, push someone to, okay, now chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Many times we request people, you please take the book, read, hear, try to understand what is it that being presented, what Krishna is trying to speak, what he is trying to give. So once we get to know the Sambandha Gyan, once we get that, then we wake up. Then we wake up from the slumber of Maya. So that's why it's so important for us to hear. So regularly we have to read and hear, then we will be in proper conception. Okay, here is one. Please listen to this. It's an interesting lecture, an initiation lecture Prabhupada is pointing out. Similarly, everyone who is holding Krishna's money, not returning to Krishna, he is a criminal. He will be punished. How they are punished, that we have seen. In India, in recent, everywhere the same thing is going on. There was war between Pakistan and India. So all the rich men had to contribute 50 lakhs, 100,000 according to everyone's capacity. Many millions of rupees were collected and it was put into the gunpowder. Swaha, that's all. So if you don't execute this swaha, then you will have to execute that swaha. So, that's all. The Vietnam is going on. Swaha. So many young men. Swaha. So much money. Swaha. You have to do that. Therefore, better how to make swaha for Krishna. Otherwise, you will have to make swaha for Maya. That's all. So we have to decide what kind of swaha we are doing. So these are the function, how to love. One has to rise early in the morning. He doesn't like but, no, I will have to satisfy Krishna. This is the beginning. Oh, I have to chant 16 rounds. He is lazy. He doesn't want to do it. But if he loves Krishna, he must do it. He must do it. So this is the point. So we may at this point of time, say, I don't have love for Krishna. But it is duty. We have given a vow at the time of initiation that I will chant 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. I will follow the 4 regulative principles. So at least as a sincere student, we have to keep up the vow. And then by keeping up the vow and going on with faith, then from imperfection, purity will come about. So like that, we will develop, certainly we will develop love for Krishna, because there is a process that is given by the Supreme Lord Himself, and the bona fide acharyas are giving us a surety. So we should never give up this process of hearing and chanting, and that is the only hope for us to come out of this conditioning of this material world. Okay, let's go to the second verse of this chapter. So Krishna is now speaking about, further he is going to elaborate after having explained that you have to hear from me. And what is it that you have to hear? Krishna is going to speak about jnana and vijnana. So what is that? Text 2. Jnanam te hamsa vijnanam idam bhakshyama sheshatah yajñātvā neha bhūyonyaj jñātavyam avashishyate. I shall now declare unto you in full this knowledge, both phenomenal and numinous. This being known, nothing further shall remain for you to know. So now Krishna here is giving an assurance that if you hear from me, then there is nothing else you need to know, because Krishna is going to speak about knowledge of this material world and knowledge of the spiritual world as well, jnana and vijnana. So vijnana is a specialized knowledge. So both the things Krishna is going to speak about. So we can see this jnanam vijnanam. In many places Krishna discusses in the Bhagavad Gita about jnana and vijnana. In the earlier chapters also we saw jnana vijnana triptatma. Krishna further in the 18th chapter he speaks about for those who are second initiated, it's a must verse to know. Jnanam vijnana sahitam, Krishna says, brahma karma svabhavaja. One should know what is jnana, one should know what is knowledge and where is knowledge, or both the things are required to be known. And Krishna is pointing out that by knowing this about me, my opulences, and about my spiritual world, and about the absolute, there is nothing further to be known. Krishna also again repeats this in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, Yomam evam asammuda janati purushottama sa sarvavid bhajati mam sarva bhavena bharata. Krishna says, that's by knowing about me, you know about everything. Everything else is known. So let's see what Srila Prabhupada is pointing out in the purport. Complete knowledge includes knowledge of the phenomenal world, the spirit behind it, and the source of both of them. This is transcendental knowledge. Elsewhere in the previous chapters, we did see a definition of knowledge. Anybody remembers that? There is a definition, Krishna speaks about knowledge. Yes, knowledge means to know about what is spirit, what is matter, and controller of both. So here Prabhupada is pointing out that complete knowledge includes knowledge of the phenomenal world, the spirit behind it, and the source of both of them. Quite a similar definition. This is transcendental knowledge. Now, this is an important statement to be understood. And we can see here, Krishna consciousness is not some sentimental process. It is a scientific process. So, systematically we understand about the absolute truth. As we saw in the previous, in the first verse, purport also, Prabhupada is giving a definition of how absolute truth includes the Lord, His energies, the Prakriti, and the paraphernalia. Everything is included in the absolute truth. And we understand this process in a scientific manner. In a very clearly, Krishna is enumerating about who he is, what is his position, what are his energies, what is spiritual energy, what is material energy, what is marginal energy, and if we do not have proper knowledge of this, it will be very difficult for us to come out of the conditioning of this material world. We may be stuck because of illusion. And also, similarly, we can see the idea is being discussed in Ishopanishad as well. In Ishopanishad also, we could see that the law, it is being pointed out, it is important to know about the spiritual nature and also the spiritual world and also about the material world, so that we will know how to come out of the conditioning of this material world. Not that to know about material world means that we have to go and then get ourselves educated and then become a big scholar or become a doctorate or go to that university. That is not the point. The point is about how the material world binds us. We need to know about this. And how to come out of the binding of this material world by engaging in devotional service. So simultaneously, we learn about this knowledge. So Srila Prabhupada in the purport is pointing out, when the cause of all causes becomes known, then everything knowable becomes known and nothing remains unknown. So this is the whole point, that by knowing Krishna's supremacy, Krishna's nature, and how he creates this material world, how there are different elements, how there are 5 gross elements, 5 subtle elements, and what is the nature of the soul, how the soul is different from matter. By knowing this, we will properly engage in the Lord's service and not be carried away by Maya. Because this is a science, it has to be understood properly. And we can see why Prabhupada many times speaks that this devotional service is science. Because we know in science there is a hypothesis, and then when you try to practice the theory that is being there, and you get the result. So and we could see, for those who went to school and whatever, they have done some experiment. When there is a acid and alkali, that is combined, then you see there is salt and water that is being produced, and the teacher gives this direction in what proportion you have to mix, how you have to mix, and then you see obviously there is a result. So we can see that in many processes, even we can see it has to be carefully done. There should be no lethargy in the process. It should be carefully done. We can also see when I just heard that when there is in the distilleries, that when some people are very much enthusiastic to keep themselves warm. They have to drink, so many varieties of alcohol are there. That you have beer, you have the different varieties, but the whole manufacturing process, it is all done. There is some specific temperature. In specific temperature, in specific condition, the proportion of alcohol has to be mixed, and then the distilling process is done. And when it is done with that perfect conditioning, then you get certain kinds of alcohol. So there is something called ethyl alcohol, methyl alcohol. So ethyl alcohol is for oral consumption. But if somebody consumes methyl alcohol, he is once for all, he will never be able to consume anything. He is finished. That's why you see many times we hear the news. Police went for the raid, and they were boiling alcohol, and people drank it, and then they died. What is the point? That there is, if you are not attentive, if you just make improper mixture, then there is disaster. So what is the point that we are trying to discuss here? The point is that it is a science. It has to be followed. Prescribed method has to be followed. Then there is proper result. So that is the point. So here, Krishna consciousness is not that our practice is something vague, something mundane, or something sentimental, or just whatever emotions that are in the heart. No, we clearly understand the position of absolute truth. We understand what is our position, and so that's why Krishna is elaborating here. Jnanam, Vijnanam. Both the things Krishna is discussing, and he is making the point very clear that by understanding this knowledge properly, one will be able to come out of the conditioning. So then one will be able to make progress as well. So that is the whole point here, that it is a scientific knowledge, and it has to be followed properly. And if you follow properly, then you will be able to get tangible results. So that's why many times we see the scientists also, they are just they don't accept this process at all, because they can't see with their visual eyes. They see whatever that they see, they believe. But there are different systems where to get results. There are different methodologies. So the spiritual methodology is different from completely the mundane methodology. But you have to go through the methodology. You need to be patient. You need to be determined. You need to have faith in the process. Then one can get to the result. So that is the point that is being made here. That Srila Prabhupada is making a point here that one has to know Krishna in truth. One has to know Krishna and his energies. Then one will be able to know about everything. And also in this purport, Srila Prabhupada is pointing out which is already being discussed, the qualification to receive this knowledge also. That Srila Prabhupada is pointing out that Arjuna is Krishna's confidential devotee and friend. Srila Prabhupada is pointing out that. There is further point that is being given by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. He says, before attaining the stage of attachment to me, the devotee understands about my powers. So which he claims that to be the jnanam, and after that he realizes my sweetness, vijnanam. So that is the material world and spiritual world. So that's interesting. Okay, same thing Srila Baladev Devotional Prabhu also is pointing out, that I will speak or teach this knowledge in fullness, Sheshatah, along with Vijnana, knowledge of my Svarupa, apart from those energies. So there are two things. One is the knowledge of this material world, the material elements, and the nature of this material world, that is one thing. And then the nature of the spiritual world and the Lord's nature himself. So Krishna is going to elaborate and discuss about these things further. Okay, text 3. Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye yatataamapi siddhanam kaschin mam veti tatvatah. Out of many thousands of men, one may endeavor for perfection, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. Now this is an important verse. Krishna is explaining that hardly anybody can know me in truth. Why? Because it's very rare for someone to know me as it is, as I am, and surrender to me. They are very rare souls. Krishna is already giving this indication. Okay. So here in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is discussing about different gradations of men. Now there are various gradations of people and how they are all having different kinds of faith, they are all in different levels. So Srila Prabhupada points out, one may be sufficiently interested in transcendental realization to try know what is the self, what is the body, and what is the absolute truth. Generally, mankind is simply engaged in the animal propensities, namely eating, sleeping, defending and mating, and hardly anyone is interested in transcendental knowledge. Now this is a plain fact. You can see of different kinds of people, who is there interested to discuss about who we are, what is our position in this material world. Nobody is interested. Everyone is just interested in eating, mating, sleeping and defending. That's all. That is their life. And we can see that in the Vedas and also it is repeatedly discussed of different koshas. Srila Prabhupada also in another purport discusses about how people are in different consciousness. Annamaya kosh, Pranamaya kosh, Mahamaya kosh, Manomaya kosh, Vijnanamaya. Different levels of consciousness are there. So Prabhupada here is discussing about someone who is exhibiting animal propensities. So animal propensities are simply eating, mating, sleeping and defending. And I am happy, very happy with that. That recently we heard, that when one lady was asked, hey, you may become a pig in next life. What about that? Oh, that is also very nice. Why not? That's good. They can enjoy there also. So that is the consciousness with some of the people are in that consciousness. Some of the people are trying to approach, they get to know about, okay, there is some power and we can go to the power. For what? To enhance my eating, sleeping, mating and defending. For that they approach the higher power. So this is again another set of people who are in another level of consciousness. So like this, if you see, if you start putting the gradations, then you will see at the last you will see someone who may be theistic, and again within the theistic group there will be persons who will be interested to approach the God for material benefits, and then again there will be another gradations of people who will be interested for liberation, and again there is a selfish motive in that, and within that there will be very few people who will be interested. They understand that the Lord is a form and I have to engage in devotional service to the Lord. And such a kind of people, Krishna is saying here that they are very rare people. That's why he says, you see here, he says Siddhanam, hardly anybody who is interested in Siddhi. Siddhi means, that to attain perfection. That is what Srila Prabhupada is translating. The perfection means what? Not just perfection in eating, mating, sleeping and defending. Perfection in making progress in spiritual life. And among those perfected souls, to know Krishna tattvataha, in fact, to know Him as the Supreme Lord, in truth, very rare souls. Very, very rare. Krishna is, at the beginning only is claiming, is giving its disclosure that you can hardly see such people. Okay. So Prabhupada in the purport further he establishes that Krishna, it is not possible for anyone to know about Krishna's supremacy, how he is glorious, how he is that Supreme Person of Godhead. Only his devotees can know, not the yogis or the jnanis. And further to point out, Srila Prabhupada is substantiating the purport to make the point that even the supremacy of Krishna is acknowledged by Sripad Shankaracharya. And then Prabhupada goes on to point out that unfortunately his followers don't accept it, he says. So, we have these statements, Narayano Paro Avyakta. Shankara says, but his followers don't accept, they misinterpret the statements. And further, Srila Prabhupada points out that how Krishna is the cause of all the causes. He is the Sarva Karana Karanam. He is giving references from Brahma Samhita and pointing out the supremacy of Krishna. Now, there is another point here to be understood that after having explained about how the yogis, jnanis, even the impersonalists, they cannot understand Krishna's supremacy. Now, Srila Prabhupada further is stressing in this purport that actually this process of bhakti only will make a person to understand Krishna in truth, in tattvataha. Otherwise it is not possible. And bhakti also, and you can see here Prabhupada is referring to Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatri Vidhim Vina Aikantiki Hare Bhaktir Utpadayaiva Kalpate. Prabhupada is pointing out that devotion also is supported by the scriptures, Upanishads, Puranas, Narada Pancharatra. Otherwise, you may say that you are practicing devotion, but your so-called devotion will only create disturbance in the society. And why this is also, if you just think about it, why Srila Prabhupada is also pointing out this, because there are many people, we will discuss that in upcoming verses also. It's an important theme. There are many impersonalists who just, when you say that, oh, you are all chanting Hare Krishna, very nice, good, you chant Hare Krishna, good, you practice bhakti. They think that, they are all some kind of beginners, some neophytes, for the loka, for the benefit of the mass of people, this is very good, you chant Hare Krishna. But, they think that I am advanced, I know better, actually I am God, I am one with God. And they misinterpret the Vedas, they have their own understanding. So that's why Srila Prabhupada is pointing out that the bhakti that we are practicing, that the bhakti that Krishna is requesting, is not something whimsical, not something sentimental, not something emotional. It is according to the scriptural codes of conduct. In scriptures, the importance of bhakti is stressed. So that is why Srila Prabhupada is pointing out that it has to be done in accordance with the Shruti, Smriti and Purana. So as per the instructions of the Gita and Bhagavatam, we engage in devotional service. And then, if we engage in such devotional service, then we will be able to, by the mercy of Krishna, we will be able to know Krishna's supreme position or unique position. Otherwise, it is very difficult to know Krishna's supreme position. Even we hear from Bhagavatam, very first verse of Bhagavatam is pointing out how it is not so easy to know Krishna's supremacy. Janmadhyasyato anvayad itaratas chartes abhignaswarat Tene brahmardayadikavaye muhyanti yat surayah. There only Srila Vyasadeva immediately points out, muhyanti, even the great suris sometimes are bewildered. Krishna's position is not ordinary. You say Brahma, he thought that he was a small boy. Is he the Supreme Lord? He got bewildered. That is the point here. Srila Prabhupada is also, in the purport, is pointing out here. Even the great demigods sometimes are confused about Krishna. Mukhyanti yat surayah. Mam tu vedana kashchana. No one knows me as I am, the Lord says. So, only by pure devotional service, one can know Krishna's supreme position. And then again, it's being pointed out that Srila Prabhupada is pointing out the rarity of the pure devotional service. Sa mahatma sudurlabha. Such a great soul is very rare. Where is this verse being discussed? Sa mahatma sudurlabha. The same chapter. Bahunam janmanamante jnanavang prapadyate vasudevam sarvamiti sa mahatma sudurlabha. So we are just speaking from Gita only. So it's a very famous verse. Again, Prabhupada is pointing out this sa mahatma sudurlabha. So you can see the third verse. This is the third verse we are discussing. Again, maybe this is the 18th verse or 20th verse. Again, Krishna is speaking about Bahunam Janmanamante. Very rare to know about me, to see such a person who is completely absorbed in me. So this is being discussed to put the point that this devotional service is very rare. It's not something cheap, but it is attainable by Tatshrunu, by giving proper honor reception from a bona fide devotee. So Srila Prabhupada sums up this purport with the key verse and is explaining the point that so therefore to know about Krishna, if you want to see Krishna, or Krishna will reveal himself to such a devotee who gives oral reception to him, and by chanting the names of the Lord with the tongue one can come to that stage. He is the last word in Brahman realization. The devotees alone can realize him as he is. Therefore it is said, Adasri Krishna Namadi na bhaved grahyam indriyai sevon mukehi jigvado swayam eva spuratyadaha. No one can understand Krishna as he is by the blunt material senses, but he reveals himself to the devotees, being blessed with them for their transcendental loving service unto him. So this is our process. Our process is to hear from a bona fide devotee and engage in Shravanam and Kirtanam, chanting the holy names of the Lord, sincerely chanting the names of Krishna, sincerely chanting the names of Krishna, and the Lord being pleased by the attempts made by this devotee, he reveals himself. This is the process. So far we heard that this devotional service is not some sentimental process, it is a science, and we need to know of the knowledge about the Lord's supremacy, the Lord's about the spiritual world and the material world, and by that way we will be careful enough to take shelter of Krishna completely. Oh, just one example just comes to my mind, that there is we can see just from Ramayana we see the example of Rishyashringa. You know that if you just have only one-sided knowledge, if you do not know about the nature of this material world or about Maya or about if you can see also Krishna discusses before about the workings of Kama, you know, what is Kama, what is the position of Kama, where it is situated. We can see in the case of Rishyashringa, his father thought that he could make his son a very powerful spiritual person by teaching him. He taught him with the Vedas, he taught him, trained him on performing various yajnas. He was protecting him from day one. In fact, he never knew that there is a species called, there is a women's species, he never knew about it. And his father thought that he was, you know, he has protected him sufficiently. But then there is a whole plan and everything, and he had to, then was it Romapad, King Romapad, I think so. No, there was a famine in the kingdom, and then there was a need for a saintly person to come to the kingdom, and then he has to put his feet. Then they said that you will be relieved of the curse, and there will be rain in this kingdom. So they had to. So obviously the king actually had sent some prostitutes, and they dressed themselves in a different way, like different species. But they came, and then they seduced him, and then they brought Rishyashringa to the kingdom, and then you all know the story, what happened later. But the essential point that wanted to discuss is that one needs to know how he was so innocent that when they touched him, he didn't know that actually he was not able to sleep after that day night. But then he wanted to go and then take the association. He never knew that he was influenced by lust. So what's the point? The point is that knowledge is required about this material world and about the spiritual world, the phenomenal world. Then one can make steady progress. Properly, one will be able to make progress. Okay. So here, Srila Vishnu Chakravarti in his commentary is pointing out, first the Lord speaks of the rarity of realizing the sweetness of the Lord among those persons. So he says the first verse, he speaks about Maya Sakta Manav Partha Yogam Yunjan Madashrayah. So he says that is my sweetness, one can take complete shelter of me. Then further he says, among the countless jivas, one may be a human being. Among thousands of humans, one of them may work for spiritual progress. Among thousands of who work for spiritual progress, only one will know me. Only one person will directly realize me, truly in the form of Shyama Sundara. This implies that the bliss from realization of personal Brahman is thousands of times greater than the bliss from realization of the impersonal Brahman. So that is the thing. So hardly one person will know Krishna as that Supreme Lord. He is Shyama Sundara. He is the Akhila Rasamrita Murti. He is the abode of all the rasas. Very, very rare soul they know. So that is why also in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, we see when the pure devotional service is glorified, there is one characteristic which is spoken about the pure devotional service, which is called as Sudurlabha. It's very rare, very, very rare. Okay. Okay, Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan Prabhu is also pointing out, many people performing the scriptural goals after realizing their own Atma as a minute conscious particle and Paramatma, by expansion measuring one Pradesha, become liberated. But only the person who attains bhakti to me after attaining association with my devotees knows me as I really am. Tattvataha, the Krishna, who takes milk from Yashoda's breast and who is now your chariot driver. Such a person realizes me as the possessor of unlimited, inconceivable energies, the cause of everything, as the jewel of unlimited auspicious qualities, such as omniscience, omnipotence and affection for his devotees, and as the complete expression of Brahman. So Krishna is the base of Brahman, Krishna is the cause of all the causes. So only very rare souls know about it. Okay. Here is a quote from Srila Prabhupada's lecture. This whole, all the universes, they are simply partial exhibition of the partial expansion of Krishna. Yasyaika nishvasita kalam atavalambya. In this way you have to study Krishna. Not only that, Krishna was born in his maternal uncle's house at Mathura and he played with the gopis or the cowherd boys. That is actual fact. But one should understand Krishna, how great he is. That is called Tattvataha. Okay. They think this is life. Work like hog and dog and then die like hog and dog, finish all business. This is not human life. Therefore Krishna says, Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschit yatiti siddhaye. They do not know what is perfection of life. Therefore we do not say, Krishna says, and if you repeat Krishna's words, the rascals, they become angry. Actually they are rascals. We plainly say, because he does not know. If I ask him, what is your next life? He cannot answer. Then what is the difference? If I ask the dog that, what is your next life? He cannot say, go, go. That's all. So if I ask any human being that, what is your next life? I don't bother about that thing. The same answer, go, go. That's all. So this is the position. We do not know what is the perfection of life. Krishna says, therefore begins real knowledge. This chapter is knowledge of the absolute. So everyone, you ask any MA, PhD that, what is your next life, sir? Go, go. That's all. Go, go. That means, why you are bothering about these things? Now this is the position. And we have taken very hard job to convince these people about Krishna consciousness. They will accept it. They will deny immediately. They will say, why do you bother us? You do your own business. Let us do our own business. But why we are bothering? Because we are servant of Krishna. Krishna wants that these rascals should be informed. These rascals should be raised from the status of ignorance. So that is our mission. Therefore we are going and pleading, sir, I am a beggar. I have come to beg from you that kindly purchase one book and you read it. So sometimes they are doing, after all human beings. So this is our business. We are stressing on, pushing on these books because modern man, if he what these nonsense have written. So if he reads one line, if he is intelligent man, he will understand the value. That is sure. That is sure. Okay, so this is the good quote for the marathon. Here is an inspiration. If you understand Krishna in truth, then immediate benefit is that Tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti. You have to give up this body. It is a fact. But after giving up, this is your last material body. No more material body, your spiritual body. So why not try one life to get back spiritual life, get back your spiritual body, Sachidananda Vigraha, and live eternal blissful life with full knowledge and live with Krishna and dance with Krishna, eat with Krishna. There was one book distributor, he was doing like this, you want to dance with Krishna, eat with Krishna, you want to have an eternal blissful life. And people are suddenly so inspired, take this book, read it, everything is there here. And that's the point. Why are you missing this opportunity? This is our salutation to everyone. Dante nidaya trinakam padayor nipatya kritva chakatu shatam etad aham bravimi he sadhava sakalameva vihaya durat chaitanya chandra charane kurutanu ragam. This is our preaching process, that flattering you 100 times, falling down on your feet. I am speaking one thing, please hear. What is that? Whatever nonsense you have learned, forget. This is our only solicitation. You have learned all nonsense, please forget. Try to hear Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and be perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll stop here. We'll continue with the rest of the verses tomorrow. If you have any questions or comments or any realizations. Yes, Paul.
I was wondering, in the shloka itself, jnana is translated as phenomenal word and vijnana is numerous for the spiritual word.
Yes.
Why is that? I can see from Vishwanath Chakravarti that he talks about knowledge and vijnana is sweetness, but here talks about...
Yeah, it's very much, okay, the question is why the jnana is... Jnana and Vijnana refers to, why it is refers to material and spiritual worlds, and whereas how to understand Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is also pointing out about the first he is speaking about the sweetness, and then he speaks about the powers. That's very much related. We can understand that in the spiritual world, the Lord is seated there in the spiritual world, and so the Lord, the name, form, the glories, the paraphernalias, everything, one has to know about that, Nama, Rupa, Guna, Leela. And also how the workings of the material world, that is also required for us to know, so that we know that this material world is temporary, this material world is not the place of our enjoyment. We have to engage in Krishna's service, and we will not be deluded by Maya. So the workings of Maya also needs to be known. So Krishna shows both the things. So that's why he's saying that I'm going to speak about Jnana and Vijnana. After having come to know about this, there is nothing you need to know. Everything else is included. So when he speaks about spiritual world, it includes the Lord's sweetness as well, and also the material world speaks about the. Then we can see the further verses that we are going to deal. How Krishna is going to say that he is the cause of all the causes. Bhumi, Rapo, Nalo, Vayu, how there are 5 elements are there, and then how the gross elements and the 3 subtle elements. All those things Krishna is going to discuss about it. So that is what it is all about. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much. So we will again meet tomorrow. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Bhagavad Gita as it is ki jai. Hare Krishna.